All right, so once you've got your project kind of set up and once you've saved it in a place that you can find it, again, it's really important that you keep all your files saved in a real logical way because After Effects is a linked based program, so all the video footage that you might bring into this is going to be linked. It's not going to be embedded into the After Effects file. So don't lose it. Keep everything in one folder, and if you're going to save that to a jump drive, save the whole folder. Don't try and save like little pieces and parts. So once we have that done though, we're just going to go ahead and create a composition. And so After Effects works basically on a composition basis. So you, instead of creating like different files, you just create different compositions within the project itself. So if you click up here, you go composition, you go new composition. You can choose whatever sort of preset you want to. So I'm maybe going to choose like a little more HD this time composition, and I'm going to keep the frame rate at 30 frames a second, and I'll just go ahead and call this like bird experiment. So you can name yours whatever you want to. There are all these options in here. I always like to try and make sure I'm thinking through the background color. For our project, the way I'm teaching it to you, I would assume you're going to want to keep it white. And if it ends up being something else, you can always click on that little box down there and just reselect the top left corner and it'll give you white. So we'll click on that, and that's going to give us a composition here. And you can see you can zoom in and out here, the magnification. So if you just click on that and just go fit, it'll fit the composition onto the into this kind of composition panel here. So if you look over here too, and where it says project, it's going to show you all the assets that you've kind of got associated with this particular project. So this whole project we have up here, the bird animation project, I have a composition. This is the symbol for compositions here, and it's composition 1. So what I want to do now is I want to import my footage. So I made these bird animations before. You made some other kind of a looping thing that happened in Photoshop. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go up here to File. We're going to go to Import. So again, that's File, Import, and we will just go to File here. And I'm going to find the footage on my desktop, so wherever you put it. And I'm just going to select that whole folder, and I'm just going to click Open. And it's basically going to dump that whole folder, and it just imported links to these things. Again, it did not import the actual footage, it just imported kind of a link out to that particular item. So I have all these things that I made, right, which is great. We have, if you remember, we made our little bird flying, just a single flap, right, that we made. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab that particular item and I'm going to drag it down here into the timeline. So this is going to place this MP4 file that After Effects is linked to. It's going to grab it and it's going to drop it down here into the timeline. So now if you see, it's only 1 second long, right? So it's going to be a really short little thing, but I have that footage that's been placed into the composition, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. So just like in Photoshop, I have all the tools up here, right? So if I want to resize this, I can just grab it and grab the handles and make it bigger or smaller. If you don't want the proportions to be kind of warped like this, you can just hold down the Shift key and that'll keep the proportions kind of constrained. You can zoom in and out. I can rotate it here by just rotating the the sort of item that I've got selected here. There are all these things. If you don't quite know what you're doing, stay away from this stuff. Just maybe try to work just with the black arrow tool and then the rotation tool. Those are the ones that I tend to use the most just for real simple things. And so now we've got our object placed inside of the composition. Now we can do stuff to it if we want to. So there's all kinds of things that you can play around with if you want to. You can do effects to it. You can add stuff. What I'm going to show you how to do now is I'm going to show you how to mask an area out of a composition like this one. So if I look at this, I don't like these black bars here. Right? They're not really going to work so well with my white background. So what I want to do is I want to mask those out or delete them. And so in Photoshop, you might go in and create a layer mask or something. And there's almost a similar thing you can do here. But what you just want to do is you want to make sure you have the bird flying selected. you want to grab the pen tool right here, and then we're just going to kind of draw a new square within that square. And if I want, I can click and drag for a Bezier curve just like I do in Illustrator. But now you'll see that it just deleted everything outside of that mask. So I just created a mask that now my bird is nice and clean. And so you think to yourself, fantastic, Scott, but I didn't like what happened with my mask. I want to alter it somehow. This is where you really have to be careful in After Effects, because After Effects just kind of has all these rabbit holes you can go down and down and down and down into. So these little twirl downs, these little twirl down triangles here are really important. And so what you want to do is you want to click that twirl down, and you'll see that it brings up all these different properties that you can adjust on that particular item. You want to make sure that you're always aware of which thing you're doing something to in After Effects. If you have 10 things stacked up here, be very careful about what you've got selected that you're altering. But you can see, you know, I have like audio, which I don't really have audio on this particular track, but if I did, I could adjust that. I also have the transform, which we're going to work with here in a minute. And then we have the masks tool. So that mask that I just made is outlined in red. And so if I select it, there it is. So that means that I can actually go in here now, and if I twirl down on the twirl down, I can adjust my mask path, which is super useful. If you want, you can actually feather your mask, so you can kind of like adjust how fuzzy the edges of your mask are. You can also change the opacity, and you can expand or contract your mask too. So you can see here, if I expand the mask, you can see how the feathering is affecting it, right? So all that can be really useful just to play around with, and you know, and sometimes you want to mess around with your masks, and sometimes you don't. So for us, we don't really need to deal with much because this is a pretty simple thing. But anytime you want to mess around with an object, you got to make sure that you've clicked the twirl downs and that you're double checking that you have the right object selected that you're kind of adjusting and you're doing something to. So that's kind of it for just getting started. Again, I'm going to want to save this thing so that it I keep it all updated, and then you can see here in the project palette I have all of my assets, so I have everything I might want to work on with in here. I have my comp here, and then I have my piece of video footage I've grabbed. So I'll show you how to kind of do something with this in our next video, but for now that's the basics of kind of getting started in After Effects.